So we're going to be looking at the modifications that I've made for some people for the Ford Lightning with the Q4 harness from Kama to eliminate the errors on startup. And basically what we do is we take this harness and we extend it till it's about 8 foot long, so that this box right here with the Ethernet and the Cat5 is up near the rear view mirror instead of down under the dash. So the first thing we're going to do is remove the harness box. We don't actually need to make any modifications to that, and then we're left with just our harness. Get rid of our little zip ties here. There we go. Now there's a whole bundle of wires that already just pass straight through. These are wires that go in and out of the IPMA that the Kama doesn't actually need to talk to. And the first thing we're going to do is actually make more of those, because there are several more pairs of wires that actually inside the harness box just loop back through, and there's no reason to extend those wires. So that's the gray, the yellow, the white, and the purple. Now there's purple and blue in here and they look a lot alike, so I'm going to start with just the gray, yellow, and white. Just cut those on that side, cut them on that side as well. And we're just going to join those together so that they become part of the pass-through. Now we've got to find the purple one. So the pink and the blue are a CAN bus pair, so they should be side by side. So there is pink and blue. That means the one I'm not holding is the purple one. I'm going to cut that one. And do the same thing on the other side. Find pink and blue, which are there on the back side, and purple is the one on the front side. So the first thing to do is then join the light colored wires together. So you need to strip the wires, and there's several different types of strippers. I like the spring-loaded ones. Some people don't like them. Some like the pair that look more like a pair of pliers that you squeeze and pull. But the important thing is that you do this with a pair of strippers. Don't try to do this with a knife or a razor. You won't get good clean strips. Now how you go about connecting your wires is completely up to you. I'm going to say something that's going to make a lot of people mad. But the best way to connect wires in an automotive environment is using a crimp connector. Most people believe that a solder is the best way to connect wires, but in an automotive environment it's actually not. Solder gets brittle, and vibrations in a car can cause it to crack. If you go look at the harness in an F1 race car or a Hummer in the military, there'll be no soldered joints. They'll all be crimped. The problem with crimps is you see how big that is and how small those wires are and what a big bulge that's going to make, and we're going to do that times 16 wires. So I'm actually not going to crimp, even though that would be the ideal solution. Where the Kama harness is, inside the cabin, not in the engine bay, not under the car, should be a fairly stable environment. So the second best way to connect these would be to solder, and so you can certainly do that. You can solder those wires together, or you can use solder seals, which is a piece of heat shrink with some adhesive and a small piece of low heat solder in it. And so you would you slide that on like to take my wires and twist them together really good so that we have a good mechanical bond. All of our electricity is going to flow through this mechanical bond. All we have to do is make sure that mechanical bond doesn't come loose, and then slide my solder seal back over it. And when I heat this up, the heat shrink will shrink, the adhesive will stick, that little bit of low heat solder in there will melt and basically pin my mechanical twist up against the wire, and that's not going anywhere, especially in the engine compartment. I probably wouldn't use these solder seals in the engine bay or on the undercarriage, but inside the passenger compartment that'll be completely sufficient. So I'm going to get these other 3 pass-through wires all stripped and solder sealed, and then we'll look at extending the CAN bus wires and the power and ground. So the 4 additional pass-through wires are now looped with the rest of the pass-through wires, and all that's left are the 12 wires that need to be extended. So there is orange and green and blue and pink on each side. Those are the 2 CAN bus networks. Brown is 12 volt ignition plus, and black is ground, and you have those on both sides. So the first thing I do is always put in the piece that's going to have the resistors, because that's the toughest part. Once you get past that, it's all downhill. So they're going to go on the white plug, the comma side that feeds the plug or the 3D printed piece. So these wires that I extended, I cut up very close because I wanted the length of the loop backs to match as closely as possible the other loop backs. But these I'm going to cut right in the middle so that I've got equal room to work on either side. And so the plug side is going to go away for a little while, and we're going to focus on the 6 wires that are on the white side. And what I like to use to extend these harnesses is this cable that I got off of Amazon. It's a shielded cable with 12 conductors inside of it. It's an automotive grade cable. Technically the STAN bus standard calls for twisted wires, and so you could use Cat 5 cable if you wanted, since those are twisted pairs, but Cat 5 cable is very hard to strip and connect. It's made to have punch through connectors. I haven't had any issues using this, so that's what I'm going to use. I'm just going to strip back a couple of inches here so that I've got plenty of room to work with. And you've got a pull string there and a shield wire and some shielded aluminum foil. All of those you can just take and cut out of the way, leaving you with 12 wires to work with. Now you could solder or crimp in your CAN bus your resistors across the CAN bus connections, but I like to make my resistors removable in case I need to do any troubleshooting or maybe ever get a bad one. So I like to use these female to female breadboard jumpers, and so I'm going to grab just 2 of those and cut those in half and strip them out so that I've got 4 female ends. Now I've got to decide which wires I want to use for each side. I've got an array of colors here, so I try to use something that makes sense. The first 2 CAN bus wires that I need to extend are pink and blue on the socket side, so I'll just start with the pink and blue. I've only got 1 pair of pink and blue, so when I do the other side I'll obviously have to pick some different colors, but gives you a place to get started. strip back my pink and my blue, and then I'm going to use the same color for both of these. I'm going to twist in the female connector. So I'll use a black and a black on the pink and blue, and that way when I go to put my resistor in, I know the resistor goes into the two black plugs. So there we go. Now I'm basically connecting three wires here: the jumper wire, the CAN bus wire, and the extender and the CAN bus wire and the harness. So doing three wires, the little white solder seals aren't big enough. So just on the ones that have jumpers, I like to use the reds. And they're too long, so I'll trim them down. So pink and black connect with pink. Blue and black connect with blue. Once again, get a good tight mechanical twist if you're going to use these solder seals, to make sure that all the solder seal is really doing is keeping your connector from untwisting. So now I have my two CAN bus wires on this half connected. Now I have the ignition and ground, which are brown and black. So I have a brown and a black. We'll use those. And these don't need the breadboard connector in them because no resistors here. These are just connections. All six that have to get extended on the socket side of the harness on this end. So what I have to do now is come to the other end of my cable and get the other end down here before I cut these. Otherwise I might get confused about which side is which. So I'm going to go ahead and measure off the length of this cable and cut it, and then I'll do that. So you can see on this end I stripped back quite a lot because it has to divide between the two pieces of the harness. So I stripped back an extra amount here. We used pink and we used blue. We used black and green, and orange, and brown. There we go. Those are the 6 wires we used. Okay, all the jumpers are made, and now the socket side is extended all the way through to the comma side. All that's left is to extend these 6 wires. We'll cut those right in the middle. And now you can see we have 2 separate ends. So these get connected. Obviously you only have one of every color, so I'm out of the exact colors, but there's a gray I can match with black. There's a tan I can match with brown. There's a red I can match with pink. There's a purple I can match with blue. There's a yellow I can match with orange. And then a white I can match with whichever one was left. I don't remember. So, but just connect those. Come down to the other end. Make sure you match the colors and connect those. I'll do that real quick and then we'll put in the resistors. So there we are. There's the end that goes at the IPMA. And then here's the end that goes into the harness box with our 4 wires. Putting in our resistors, which is what we're going to do next. And you can wrap these up with electrical tape or wire loom or whatever your preference is. Even if I'm going to use loom, put a piece or 2 of tape around it to hold everything in place. So CAN bus spec calls for 60 ohm terminating resistors. Good luck finding those. 56 and 62 are what you're most likely going to be able to find. These are 62s, but one of the reasons I like having my resistors removable is in case I do need to change from a 62 to a 56. Just take those, bend them into a U shape. I usually trim them down so they don't stick out quite so much. And then find your 2 browns or whatever colors you used. Stick your resistor down in there just like that. Then your other 2, in my case the 2 black ones. And it's time to go test it in the car.